Well, hey, welcome back to the HC Conversations podcast. Today we're going to continue on in our conversation that we've been having about the story of Hope Community, how we got to start, and this is, I guess, conversation 3. I almost said week 3.
Yeah, episode number 3.
Yeah, episode number 3.
The mini-series.
Our little HC mini-series.
And the final episode, right? I think we kind of decided that.
Yeah.
So we'll wrap up the story today and do something else next month. I don't know what
nice
yet.
little bow on it. So today we're going to pick up where we left off last time. So we were
Yes,
talking about, looking for a building, looking at several different locations, one of those of which had been torn down.
Yes, indeed.
And finally, enough people told us that we should look at the building that we're currently in, which was the old Masonic Temple, because it had been for sale with a realtor for a long time, and then finally came up for auction. So we're like, okay,
yeah,
we'll
and
look
I don't know
at
if we
it.
talked about this last time or not, but like we also during that time, as this building was suggested a couple of times, we were like, no, that's not what we want. We don't want to. When it was for sale, we were like, someone's like, oh, that building's for sale. And we're like, no, we don't want to do that. And then when it came up for auction, I was like, oh, it's going up for auction now. We're like, no. And then we're like, okay, finally, yeah, we'll do it.
So we decided to look at it. We set up a time with the auctioneer to come look at the building before the day of the auction, because we didn't want to, just show up day of the auction and try to make a decision on the building.
Yeah, it's really bad to make large, financial decisions or any kind of massive decisions. Like emotions are high.
Right. So we got into the building, and as soon as we walked in the space, we were kind of like, yeah, this is it. This is where we were supposed to be. Which was funny, because for the longest time we're like, no, we know where we're supposed to be, and it's not there.
It's anywhere but there. Yeah, you said as soon as we walked in the building, like it hit us, and I was just thinking, there's 2 things that hit us.
Yeah.
Number 1, what hit us was this is the space. Number 2, at least next thing that hit me was it smells old in here. Like it was,
It was old and
musty and
kind of shut up, stale cigarette smoke kind of smell.
Yeah,
all
just
that good stuff.
Not that, but that was that.
Yeah, so we looked all around the space. We saw all the potential of this building, and so we began to make a plan for how we could purchase this place.
Yeah, and so auction day comes. Auction day is coming, and Paul here isn't even going to be there for the day of the auction because he is for work. You were out in Yellowstone, I believe.
Yeah, I was at the National Master Gardener Coordinators Conference in Chico, Montana, which was right outside of Yellowstone.
Okay, yeah. So
I went to Yellowstone a day early.
Yeah, so Paul goes to Yellowstone, and it's like, okay, Phil, you get to go try to buy a building. And mind you, I'd never, let alone bid on anything. I'd never been to an auction before. And
I was the guy that grew up going to farm auctions
right,
with my dad and stuff. So.
Yeah. I'm like, so it's like, okay, well, here's your little paper plate stapled to a stick or whatever.
You got a yellow card with a number written on it.
I don't remember. Yeah. I came to the auction, and it was me and Christy, my wife, and a couple of family members.
Yeah.
A couple of my.
I think my parents came down.
I think so. Yeah.
But yeah, I was actually at Old Faithful in Yellowstone, which was one of the few places in that park where you can get cell phone service. And so, I was walking around. I can remember just walking around, looking at the different things in Yellowstone, and praying the entire time about the building, about Phil buying it, bidding for the first time, and so
and so we end up winning the auction, and at the very moment that they say sold and point to us, Old Faithful erupted.
Yes,
that did not happen. I don't think so.
No, it didn't. But it was shortly thereafter.
You'd be like, it's a sign from the Lord. No, the auction process though, it was interesting because there were several people who were here. I was really surprised by, because it was like, what would you possibly do with this building?
Right, especially because of the zoning for this building.
Yeah, like it couldn't be turned commercial, or at least not easily. It basically had to stay as some sort of like a hall or like a meeting space or something like that, which is perfect because the church fits in that. But there were several people. There were, I think, like three or four people really like bidding, but most people got out right away, and it was just us and one other person. And then this was God doing His thing. No one was really super interested in it, right? And so, because I think we had a number that was like, we're going to go up to this point, and we came in underneath of that, and it was like, all right, here we go. We just bought a building. We just bought a building, so it was something, you know. Man, I wonder if for like the for our YouTube audience, for the visual people that aren't just listening to audio, if we should splice in some photos. Maybe we'll do
Sure.
that. We'll see. We'll see how much time I feel like taking to edit the video, but
I think if you scroll all the way back on our Facebook page, they're
that's
on
a
there.
lot of scrolling.
It is a lot of
this point.
scrolling,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
they're there.
Well, I'm thinking specifically of the moment we bought the building. That one's not on there. The
No.
picture that I sent to you,
Sitting on the throne.
sitting on the throne. Well, we should probably define throne because that's a different expression for different people. So this was a Masonic lodge or tubular lodge. I don't really know what that means, but that's what it said, like, or tubal
Tubal Lodge.
lodge.
I think that was just the name of the lodge.
Yeah, tubular is something that like surfers said in the '90s. Tubular, bro. Anyway, I watched too much stuff. There was, as the Masons Temple man, there was like these weird chairs that were very ornate. We'll say
And they were big.
They were huge, and there was one at the front of the stage that was like the big throne, and then there's a little side stage that had a little mini throne. And yeah, the first picture I sent to Paul was me like perched upon the big throne
With the big G
with the
above your
big Mason's
your head.
G behind my head. So yeah, there was actually, this was kind of a fun part of things. There was a lot of stuff left in here when we first looked at the place. Like, we're just gonna leave it at that. There's lots of interesting stuff, and we're like, we could do some fun things with this. But by the time that we closed and actually got in here, they pretty much cleared everything out, including the cool thrones. So
And they
But
did
yeah.
other weird stuff too
Yeah.
when they
So-
left.
but
So
that was it. We bought the building. And
yeah,
that was
September 16th.
wow. You have the date just
I
on
do. I
here.
don't know why I remember that.
Yeah.
But no, it wasn't. September 19th.
Oh wow, 3 days. I can't believe you were
September
so far
19th,
off.
because September 16th is another anniversary for work stuff. So
Oh.
September 19th, 2016.
2016. Bought the building.
We, by the time closing happened, we got in early November,
Yeah, it was like the first week in November.
and then we had to hustle to get things ready for our first service in January.
Yes.
'Cause remember, we picked a date. We didn't have a location. We'd advertised that. It's just like, all right, we're just going to trust God with it.
January 8th. So it was almost, we had almost exactly 2 months.
Yeah.
With, Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's in there as well. We got 2 months
Yep.
to get this place completely,
And so we started off cleaning.
cleaning and cleaning and cleaning.
So
And
we're like,
cleaning.
and it's funny, like looking back, it's like, why did we clean?
Why did we clean? We knew we were just going to tear a bunch of stuff out. But we cleaned because we knew we were going to have like a couple of like
Yeah.
like a dedication kind of service, a preview service. And so we wanted to freshen it up a bit. So yeah, we spent a ton of time cleaning.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time cleaning. Your dad scrubbed the carpet. Remember that?
Dad
nasty
scrubbed the carpet like 3 times just for us to rip it out, and I felt so bad about that.
But hey, at least it smelled
It smelled better.
clean-ish in here
yeah.
for our first kind of dedication service.
Yeah.
Also at that service, it was cool. We had a lot of support from family, friends, potential people that were going to maybe be part of
Can be part of what we're
the
doing.
community. But
Yeah.
we also spent time praying and writing prayers on the walls of this building before we
Painted over them.
everything.
Yeah. So there's scriptures on the walls. There's prayers on the walls. There's some song lyrics on the walls. I remember
Mhm.
walking around reading all that. Yeah. And that was I don't remember the date exactly
the
of that
date.
first preview. Oh, you talked to the people.
Okay. So after that, then,
I had no way to easily get to that. So
Phil's got the nice book. So you could have just asked me to reach it because I could have just reached it. So after that first preview service, then we started demolition because we wanted to reconfigure the lobby. Because remember, we were going to also try to do a coffee shop, so our lobby was a lot more open. Had some standing kind of bar for people to stand and drink coffee. So we ripped out a wall. We pretty much ripped out a closet, built some walls.
Also, we don't have the date in here of the first preview service. I thought we did, just some pictures.
And really changed a lot of things in that time.
Uh-huh.
For our first kind of preview service, which I think was like early December, maybe late November, early December.
Yeah, so I think we did like a total of 3.
Yeah, 'cause
We did
like
the
a
one that was like the
dedication.
dedication, and then we did a preview service at like the end of November, beginning of December, and then we did another one that was like
Mid-December.
it was like a Christmas
Christmassy.
message. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And so in between that, we would do construction. Then we'd have to clean a
Just
bunch
like
to get the building
crazy,
presentable,
clean like
and then
crazy.
go back to work and then clean some more. And that process just kept going back and forth. We painted a lot of things, had a lot of help painting. We ripped up flooring.
Oh, the nightmare of the flooring.
That was an entire process that we're not going to
No.
dive into. If you want to
Ask
know
one
more,
of us about that
yeah,
someday.
just come find one of us. We'll tell you. But got our flooring in, polished the floor, we sanitized the floor. Sanitize the floor because I have a family member that works for a concrete supply company, and he got us some floor sealer, which is, it turns out it's actually like a sealer to keep things from soaking, like stains from soaking into the concrete, but it's pretty much straight isopropyl alcohol.
Oh yeah, it smelled so bad in here.
So late December, we're in putting this stuff on.
Oh
Yeah.
We have like all the doors and windows open. It's freezing outside, but if we didn't, we were going to pass out trying to get the floor sealed.
So we sanitized that floor.
Oh yeah, that was
with
clean floor.
alcohol.
Yeah.
And we got stuff ready for our first service.
Yeah, and so then
January 8th, 2017.
January 8th, 2017 rolled around, and we officially opened the doors for our first service as a church at Hope Community. And man, we got by, as they say, by the skin of our teeth of like having this place ready. And we'll just call this youthful ambition or ignorance or naivete to think we could have it completely ready, because the original plan was like, we got 2 months, man, we can have the upstairs all ready and we'll have the downstairs, which, if you've been in our building is the HC Kids area, like we'll have that completely ready for the first service. And in the basement, it used to be it was like a social hall, right? So this big open hall with a kitchen off the one part of it. I'm like, yeah, we'll have it all ready and we'll have it, it's gonna be great, it's gonna be awesome. The basement was like just not even touched. We're like, just close the door to the basement. We're just going to store stuff down there. So when we opened up the first service on January 8th, it was the upstairs. We didn't have the kids' space. We didn't have a lot of those things. But man, we launched, and it was a great Sunday. And there was
a lot of excitement.
A lot of excitement. A lot of people. A lot of people that family, friends, people from our previous church. A lot of people. A couple people, like at least one person you went to college with.
Yeah.
Like, and there's just like, we're here to support you, and we want to see what this is about, and want to celebrate with you. Full room the first Sunday. I remember like having to set up additional chairs, like those.
Yeah.
Those old Death Trap black folding chairs that we had, like just lined up. And that was the first Sunday.
And then the second Sunday came along, and we had like maybe 20 people in the room.
Because everybody who was just there to support you was like, okay, we supported
Yeah.
you. Bye.
So then we got to see who was actually going to be part of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And so we looked around at about a group of maybe, like you said, about 20-ish people and said, okay, this is our church.
Yep.
I guess this is where we start, and we'll see, where it goes from there. And so, yeah,
and from there it went.
From there it went.
We continued to grow. We continued to reach people. We continued to shrink and reach people. I say we grew and we shrank because there were many times where we'd grow, we'd shrink back, we'd grow, we'd shrink back. And part of that as a challenge as a church plant is just a lot of people hear that, hey, there's a new church in town. So you get a lot of disgruntled church people coming to check out a new church. It's like, oh, maybe, we can kind of, fit in with this church or take over this church.
Yeah, there's a couple of, it's weird because there's a couple different groups of people, like one, you have the kind of the disgruntled or angry church crowd. They're like, we didn't like the last church. Let's go see if we like this one. And it's like, yeah, probably not. If, you had that attitude at the last one, you're probably going to like this one. Then you kind of have just like the weird church crowd that's just like, ooh, a new church. I'm like super Christian-y and like strange. But those people would just kind of come in and out, check things out. And then you also had the people, I think, that were like legitimately like people looking for a they're at a different church. They hadn't settled in yet, or God was calling them somewhere else, and they would come here, and they would hardly ever stick.
Yeah.
In fact, it kind of got to a point where it's like we would be able to tell, like when people would come through the door, and if we could even just to see them or hear their story, just kind of know them, like, yeah, you're not gonna like it here. Like, this isn't going to be the place for you. Because for people that are coming from a church background, is like, well, this doesn't look like church as I'm used to. This doesn't feel like church as I'm used to. And so, like, what was really exciting and also presented its challenges, though, is that, like in the early days, but really all throughout, it's like the people who are part of Hope Community, especially in the earliest days, especially as we looked at like, the 20 we had and we started growing from there. Like the vast majority, like probably 70, 80% of them, I would say, I haven't done the math. That's just like me throwing a number out there, are people who either had never really had any kind of church experience, weren't like, faith wasn't important, church, I mean, maybe it was like, I'm a Christian, but I don't go to church, I've never been to church, or stopped going a long time ago, maybe went as a kid or whatever. And like, those are the people that came and were like, oh, all right. Like, I like this. I want to be a part of this.
Yeah.
Which was awesome, because that's what we set out to do. We're like, hey, we don't want to necessarily just like go steal a bunch of Christians from other churches. We want to reach people. We want to make a difference. And so in that way, it was awesome. But then as we start growing, we start to try to do some things that require like a little bit of like leadership and like, hey, here's how we do things, and we need help with stuff. That's when it really started to present an issue, like a challenge, because it's like, we don't have anybody who's like ready to actually take other things on.
Right. It's like, hey, you met Jesus last week. Yeah, you're not qualified to start teaching kids about the Bible.
Yeah. So you met Jesus last week. You could tell people about him. I mean, no, I don't say tell people about him, because there is a sense in which you can do that. You can tell everybody, and I love that too, because you see that excitement. People would bring friends. But yeah, you're not going to be like, okay, now I'm going to trust you to teach my children about Jesus, or, I'm going to trust you to help disciple adults as a small group leader. And you're like, yeah, you're not ready for that. So what do we do? How do we navigate that? So that's actually been one of the biggest tension points, pain points throughout this whole process, throughout the 5 years, almost 6 years now, has been like that struggle of like, man, we need some people that we can actually hand stuff off to and say, like, lead in this area, own this area. Like, here's the vision of the church. Like, go crazy. Yeah. So.
Yeah. We also, during this time, we had some people that were looking for a different kind of church, and they came, and Hope Community would have been a good fit, but they weren't ready to be part of a startup church.
Yeah, that was rough too. Yeah, where it's just like, and I get it, but it kind of bothers me a little bit, and maybe that's just like my pride or whatever, some sinfulness of being like, love what you're doing, believe in what you're doing, but I need this program. I want this thing for my kids. I want this thing to be a part of. Do you guys have that? Are you going to offer that? I'm like, yeah, we really want to, and that's in the plans in like a year, or 2 years. And it's like, and so they'll be like, I want that, but I don't want to be a part of making that happen.
Right.
If you had that, I would like to.
I want to benefit from.
I would like to consume that, but
I don't want to contribute to it.
Yeah, and so man, like, and those are like the conversations. Like, there'd be times during the week someone would come in, or times after a service, like, and have those conversations. And it's just like trying so hard to just be polite and like, yeah, I understand. Meanwhile, being like, well, if that's what you want, then do it. Like, come be a part of it, because we'll never get there if it's just like you and me and a handful of people like trying to make everything happen. So yeah, that was always painful. There's also those times where like there are people who like kind of get like plugged in and locked in, and you think are like part of the church. Like, yeah, great, this is awesome, and then you were wrong. You know what I mean? And they're just gone. They're like, yeah, I'm leaving. This isn't working for me. And it's just like, ow.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So that was something.
Yeah. So along our journey, we've had a lot of pain, a lot of excitement. And it's been a good learning experience. Good way to learn to trust God in all kinds of new ways. And that brings us to the next kind of part. The pandemic. Yeah,
it's just so weird. Like, as we're going to talk about this in a minute, is that we are two completely different churches pre and post COVID. I think a lot of churches feel that right now, but like one, the people who are part of the church, but two, just the way we operate, the way everything feels, it's like that just seems so foreign. Like, when you have a dream and you're like, in your dream, like, I'm in my house, but it's not really your house, like in real life, like kind of thing. And that's how, like, looking back on those first couple of years of the church feel to me from where we are now. I'm like, that was our church, but it doesn't feel like the church that I know. Like, things were just so different pre and post COVID. And so it's like, well, no, obviously it's in a way it's like we're coming up on 6 years as a church, but it almost just feels like we're coming up on two.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So
pandemic. Go ahead.
Right before the pandemic, We had experienced a lot of growth. It was an
Yeah,
exciting time.
It really was.
We had some cool things planned, and then
We had some cool things, but I mean, just that was right at peak time too, because attendance and engagement ebbs and flows. Like for us, it's always like, you know what, October, November through like March is just like, wow, like things are really happening.
Yeah.
We are beginning to have several conversations of like, hey, we're out of space. We're going to need to go to 2 services soon. And we had some cool things planned, events and community engagement kind of stuff. And yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
and then the pandemic hit and crushed all of that. We had a lot of people that were
Yeah.
new to the church, but they weren't connected. So
Only been
they-
there a couple weeks or a month or so.
so they drifted away, and we didn't have a good way to connect with those people because we didn't have relational connection. We didn't have sometimes their contact information to be able to reach out to them, and so we decided that we were going to not hold in-person Sunday services for the entire pandemic. We had community groups that were meeting online, meeting in homes whenever it was safe to do so.
Yeah.
Because it was the early days of the pandemic, so there was a lot that we didn't know, a lot of
nobody-
misinformation going around.
Yeah, I mean, like looking back, would we maybe do things differently? I think a lot of people probably would.
Yeah.
But it was like, we don't know what's going on, so we're going online. We're doing like what everybody did.
Everybody else did. So we did everything, Sunday gatherings online for almost a year.
Yeah, we had this weird little lull. And one of the things that we did too, and we do this a lot when it comes to how we do things, like when will we cancel, when will we not, how to like, we kind of, a lot of times we'll take our cue from like, we were taking our cue in this a lot from the school, right? It's like, hey, whenever school gets back, then we'll maybe start talking about coming back to our building. And we tried that actually. So in the fall of 2020,
Yeah.
because there was like a lull
It was like
and there was like a downturn in like COVID numbers
September.
and stuff. Like, let's try to come back. And so we came back for a couple of weeks and it just didn't go well. You know, like people, a lot of people didn't come back. People weren't ready to come back. And then then there was this massive spike in numbers for COVID. And there was like 2 or 3 Sundays in a row where it's like, I don't forget people actually being here for the service. I don't even know if we have the volunteers to do a service.
Right.
Like
if people would show up.
we don't have, like, we were missing band members. We were missing tech people. We were missing like kids volunteer because it's like COVID was going around like crazy. And so we decided, okay, we're going to shut it down again. We don't really think of it as again because we never really started back up. Yeah. So then we were back digital or online only
till Easter
till Easter
2021.
of 2021. So yeah, a full year. Yeah, and that was an interesting time as a church because I think there was actually some really good things that came out of it for us. I'm not saying we're great at it yet, but we've got a lot better at having to do stuff digitally. Like that actually forced us to be like, we got to figure some of this out and like upgrade tech and do those things. That's why this podcast exists.
Yeah.
Because we're like, how are we going to like stay in contact with people and engage with people? Like, well, we'll try a podcast. I guess we can do that. And so there's some good things and good learning experiences that came out of it. But there was a lot of pain that came in that too. I mean, that's true for everybody that in the pandemic and stuff. It's like, yeah, it messed with a lot of people's lives and rhythms, and people lost loved ones, people got sick, and like, but as a church, there was that definitely as well. It's like, man, we lost a lot of people. There were some people that we lost that were kind of upset at how we handled it. There were some people, many people who we lost that, like you said, just weren't, they weren't connected before. Right. So, you know, being gone for a year obviously messed that up a lot. We lost all that momentum that we had. That was like the worst thing. It's like one thing if like there was no momentum, it was just kind of beforehand, but it was like, yes, it's happening. Here we go.
Yep.
So yeah, it was a pain. It was a pain.
My son came back in April 2021, and we kind of had to start from scratch again. We still had a small core of committed people, of people that were really connected through community groups or had strong relational connections other ways, or were serving on the worship team because we were still meeting.
We were still coming in to record
services.
Yeah.
And so our church post-COVID looks much different than our church pre-COVID because we have basically a completely different congregation.
You know what's crazy though?
Yeah.
You said like we had about a core group of people that stuck with us through COVID. And I was just thinking about that compared to when the church first started, it'd be almost exactly the same numbers wise. It was, 20 plus or minus whatever, 5. So yeah, coming out of COVID, it was like, yeah, we probably had about between 20 and 30 people after that were still like, yep, we're connected to this church. And what made the difference is every single person that stuck with it and made it through and came back and are still now like a part of this church and growing in this faith community. Every one of them was connected in a community group or a service team, like with the band. Mm-hmm. And so, in other words, it was everyone who was relationally connected to a church, which just drove home this point. It's like, listen, like church is not an event that you go to. It's not just about content. It's not about a message and songs. You can get that anywhere.
Right.
Because if that's all that it is, then when something like a pandemic happens, that was all that it was.
Yeah.
But those who came out on the other side, when it's like, all right, well, now we're starting back up, you look around and it's like, oh, these were everyone who was in a community group. This is people who are serving. This is in our community groups. We met on Zoom. We did those things. And so it just hammered home that like, all right, this is what's important. And it almost became, that's why, again, I talk about it's like two separate churches. That group of people almost became a second launch team. Just like really the first launch team was those first 20 people that we had for that second service. It's like, well, now we're right back there again with another group of people, which in one way was exciting because like we have this group of people and we've been through some stuff together. But then on the other hand, it's like, oh man, it's like we're starting from scratch again. It was hard enough to do this once. It's going to be really hard to do it again. So yeah, go ahead.
And that's where we find ourselves today.
Oh yeah, that is.
We are still building. We're still trying to reach people. And we've grown definitely from that first group of 20-ish people after COVID.
After COVID, yeah.
Add a lot of new faces. And it's exciting.
It
We've
is.
got some momentum going into the fall, but we find ourselves kind of at the same point that we've been at before where it's like, okay, we need some leaders. We need some people that can do some things, that can show up consistently, that can be like, yeah, what do you need? I'll do it.
Yeah.
And that are really bought into our mission of helping inspire people to follow Jesus.
Yep.
And so that's where we are today.
It is. And you know, we were having that conversation this morning, just like there's so much potential, like just to make a massive impact in our community because like it's Jesus, it's the gospel, it's his spirit moving. There are people who are hurting and broken and looking for answers and trying to figure out and make sense of the world. And we try to find it all these different places and look for it. And it's just like, no, guys, like get your eyes off of politics and culture crap and like social junk. And just like, no, like there's only one thing that will satisfy and fill you. And the church like has that message and like knows that truth. And so it's like, there's so much potential to just be like, okay, like God is going to do something. There's going to be a move of the Spirit and like kingdom power, gospel proclamation stuff happening in this community if we have like the people that can step into that.
Right.
You know, it's just, you know, I was sharing this morning, I'm finally getting around to watching The Chosen, which 10 out of 10, highly recommend.
I was on him over a year ago to watch that.
It was a
Kobe and I watched it.
It was a time
so
thing.
Good.
Yeah, well, it was on its own app, and I forgot about it, and then it like popped up on Amazon Prime. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Let's watch that. But you know, in the last episode, it's about Jesus and the woman at the well, and like there's that line where it's like, hey, the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. And so yeah, like that's almost like been the mantra off and on throughout the story of the church too, where it's just like, man, just, you know, the old adage of like pushing a rock uphill. I'm like waiting to get to that crest where it goes downhill and it starts just like snowballing. But yeah, you know, I'm excited though about where we're at. But
there's so much potential.
What God has done, what He's going to continue to do, and just looking forward to being a part of it and having some awesome people come alongside us. Yeah.
So for those of you that have been a part of it, thank you. Thank you so much for sticking the journey. For those of you that have been part of it from day one, oh my gosh.
Proud of you.
Yeah. Proud of you.
Proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you for sticking in it, for believing in what God has called us to and called you to be part of on this journey. For those of you that aren't part of it yet, or maybe you're just getting into it, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for?
Not like the song. But seriously, like, what are you waiting for? Come join a purpose, a mission that's bigger than you, that's bigger than us.
Yeah, I mean,
but a purpose that God invites us into.
Yeah.
That He wants to partner on with us, and not just like, no, I can do this on my own. He's like, no, I've got these beautiful people that I've created and called and gifted to go out to carry my good news
Right,
to hurting
right.
people.
Yeah, and Paul's preaching right now. I love it. It's true, and there's this thing that's like, yeah, but I got other stuff going on, and it's like, man, I've found this to be true in my own life. You've found this to be true. Other people have found this to be true over and over. You will never experience and fully know what God wants to do in you until you experience what He wants to do through you.
Right.
And it's just like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
it's awesome.
And I know you might be thinking, well, I'm too busy for church. I get that. I'm too busy for church too.
Me too.
I work a full-time job in addition to what I do at the church. I've got a young family.
Yeah.
But somehow, like, you make time. You find time for the things that are important to you.
And it's worth it.
It's worth it.
You'll find it's worth it. Yeah.
So thanks so much for sticking with us, for watching this episode. If you like what you heard, go ahead and share it with a friend.
Yeah.
And we'll
Sharing
see
is
you
caring.
on a Sunday morning here at Hope Community.
Yeah. And next week we'll be back with
Next month.
next month. I always say next week. We'll be back with something new for you. We don't know what it is yet. If you got a suggestion, fire it our way. Maybe we'll talk about it. Maybe not, because maybe it's a bad suggestion. But I'm just saying. I'm done now. Goodbye.
Bye.